All right, let's jump right in. Today, we're looking at a pretty wild scenario, a detailed what-if for the year 2026. Based on some recent analyses, we're going to walk through a speculative power play that could, quite literally, remake the world map. So let's get into it. So, where does this all kick off? Well, according to the sources we're looking at, this chain of events doesn't start with a treaty or a summit. It starts with a sudden, shocking act of force in the middle of the night. Yeah, this quote from a news report in the scenario really says it all, doesn't it? Dragged from their bedroom while sound asleep. This isn't diplomacy, it's a raid. The whole thing begins with the capture of Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro and his wife, a move designed for maximum shock and awe.
And just look at how fast this all supposedly goes down. We're talking explosions, a capture, and a presidential announcement, all within just a few hours. The goal, as the analysis puts it, is to create a fait accompli. Basically, a done deal. An irreversible situation that the world just has to wake up and accept.
Okay, so you have to ask yourself, what's the big idea here? What's the strategy behind a move that's so audacious? Well, the sources we're digging into point to a new and really aggressive foreign policy doctrine.
And it's got this nickname, the Donroe Doctrine. As you can probably guess, it's a mashup of Donald and Monroe. But this is way more than just dusting off some old policy. The analysis we're looking at describes it as a radical evolution, a total reinvention.
And you can really see the difference right here. The original Monroe Doctrine from way back was defensive. It was basically America telling Europe, hey, this is our backyard, stay out. The Donroe Doctrine, on the other hand, is described as a complete opposite. It's offensive. It's expansionist. It's not about preventing interference anymore. It's about actively projecting power to reshape the entire hemisphere and control its resources.
And this quote, pulled right from the source material, just lays it all out on the table. U.S. dominance in the Western Hemisphere will no longer be questioned. I mean, it doesn't get much more direct than that, does it? It's a very clear statement of intent.
Now, it's so important to understand that this action in Venezuela isn't seen as a one-off event. According to the analysis, it's the first domino to fall in a much larger game. It's designed to set off a chain reaction across the region and even across the globe. So who's the first domino to feel the pressure? Colombia. The source reports that a direct, unambiguous, and pretty blunt warning was sent to its president. The message is crystal clear. Fall online or you could be next. Then you've got Cuba. For years, its economy has been propped up by Venezuelan oil. So with the U.S. now theoretically in control of that lifeline, the sources use this really stark term. They describe Cuba's government as being in a beheading-pending state. Its very survival is now at the mercy of Washington. But these shock waves are designed to travel way beyond Latin America. This strategy targets global rivals. By controlling Venezuela's massive oil reserves, the U.S. could flood the market, drive prices down, and put a huge strain on Russia's war economy. At the same time, China's $60 billion-plus investment in Venezuela is suddenly at risk, and that creates powerful new leverage for the U.S. in any trade negotiations. So if you thought that was bold, well, it all seems to build towards an even more audacious plan. If controlling Venezuela is a regional power play, this next move described in the sources is a global one, with massive historical implications. It starts with this number, $700 billion. That's the expert estimate, cited in the analysis, for the cost of acquiring Greenland from Denmark. I mean, just let that number sink in. It's a staggering figure for a truly staggering idea. So, why Greenland? The sources list several key reasons. First, there's immense mineral wealth, like rare earths. Second, it's about blocking Russia or China from getting a strategic foothold in the Arctic. Third, it's a perfect location for a new missile defense system called the Golden Dome. And finally, it's about securing a legacy, a massive territorial expansion for the history books. But there's one huge obstacle: the people who actually live there. A poll cited in the analysis is pretty stark. Even if every resident were offered a personal payout of $100,000, an overwhelming 80% say they would oppose joining the U.S. And this is where things get really, really risky. The analysis warns that if a sale doesn't happen, a forced annexation could trigger NATO's Article 5. That's the collective defense clause. An attack on one is an attack on all. Just think about that. It would mean NATO allies would be obligated to defend Greenland from the United States. It's a scenario that could literally shatter the most powerful military alliance in history. Okay, so after walking through this really aggressive geopolitical vision, the final part of this analysis pulls way back and asks a much deeper question. What does all this mean on a human level?
If the world really does revert to what one source calls jungle law, where hard power is the only thing that matters, what's the human cost? What does it mean for the average person in Venezuela, or Cuba, or even Greenland in a scenario like this one?
The analysis suggests that a world dominated by this kind of raw power competition could just narrow our collective sense of what's possible, forcing us to focus on survival and security over things like progress and collaboration.
And what about our global connections? A landscape that's defined by division and threats, well, that erodes the trust and openness you need to have a genuine global community.
Ultimately, a scenario like this one really challenges us to think about how we would process and respond to a world being remade by force, right before our very eyes.
And that's really the final question these analyses leave us with. It's not just about presidents and doctrines, it's about us. When the map is redrawn, where do we find ourselves? That's a provocative thought to end on.